Welcome. This is the orientation for students who will be completing the second practicum for the Memorial University School of Social Work BSW program. A lot of the information you will already be familiar with, but we hope this orientation will be a good refresher and helpful for you. Please don't hesitate to contact a member of the field team if you have any remaining questions, queries, or concerns. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy this great learning experience as you complete the final semester of your BSW program. Throughout the orientation, we'll be talking about an overview of field education, what it is, what do students learn, what do you need to know, the roles of field instructors, and agency mentors. You'll also learn about the requirements prior to your practicum, the orientation of your practicum, requirements during your practicum, and expectations of students and field instructors and agency mentors, and recording requirements. You'll also learn about where to find key resources, forums, and templates, the evaluations to be completed, and how to get answers to any questions you may have. Field education is known as social work signature pedagogy. Signature pedagogy represents a central form of instruction and learning in which a profession such as social work socializes its students to perform the role of practitioner. Field education is the component of the curriculum in which students achieve understanding of the relevance of theory to practice and begin to develop competence in using their values, knowledge, and skills. So field practicums really are an opportunity for you as a student to move from the classroom setting into the field and into practice. As you can see in the diagram developed by Larkin, we have three cogs. One is field, one is classroom, and one is competent generalist practitioner. And what that means is that for social work as a profession, we have a classroom education, but we also have field education. So a social worker truly cannot be educated without having both in their training. Field education truly is the critical bridge between social work education and practice. This is the opportunity to take the critical knowledge, skills, and values you've learned in the classroom and then move through your practicums to strengthen and further develop those skills and knowledge in the field. Further information about the purposes and objectives of field education can be found in section 1.2 of the Field Education Manual. There are a few things to consider in regards to the purposes and objectives in field education. As mentioned, further details can be found in section 1.2 of the Field Education Manual. An important element of field practicums is that the practicum experience is not just about doing tasks and learning the specific job in an agency or specific forms that need to be completed. These aspects can change 100 times throughout your career. BSW field practicums are instead designed to serve as an educational rather than a training or work experience. Field education is about learning to become a social worker. Practicums and field instruction assist students in making the transition from active learners to professional social workers, with professional socialization being a primary focus of field education as students develop a professional self-concept. Field education is also the critical component of the curriculum in which students achieve understanding of the relevance of theory to practice and begin to develop competence in using their values, knowledge, and skills. So both practicums really are an opportunity for you as a student to move from the classroom setting into the field and into practice. During the practicum, students are expected to further develop professional values, professional identity, and skills in the art of helping. It is also important for students to know that both the BSW and MSW field programs at Memorial are designed to ensure the field practicum meet the Canadian Association for Social Work Education, or CASWE, standards for accreditation. So if you're looking for some more information on CASWE, please check out their website, and we have attached the link there for you. So let's talk about some of the people that you'll be in contact with during your practicum. First, there's the field education coordinators here at the school. So we are the people who will help you coordinate and arrange your practicum from the start to the end of the process. Your field liaison is a person who is assigned to you throughout the term, who will be in contact with you at various points to see how things are going. So if you have any questions or concerns. More than likely, one of the field education coordinators here at the school will be your field liaison, and you will be advised as to who that person is. There is an agency coordinator at your agency. It could be the person that oversees the practicum for many students. So at Eastern Health, for example, it's the professional practice consultant who is the agency coordinator for the 15 to 17 practicums we would have during a semester at that particular agency. Or in a small agency, it could be the executive director of the agency. So a field instructor is a person who has been assigned to supervise you throughout your practicum. That field instructor will be a social worker who will have either a BSW or MSW, and they will be responsible for helping you with your learning contract, as well as your weekly supervision and your midterm and final evaluation. At your agency, there may also be an agency mentor. For example, in some of our agencies, we don't have social workers on site, or the field instructor may not be on site. So the agency mentor may be assigning you tasks on a daily basis. They're your go-to person, but we may have a field instructor outside the agency who's providing the field supervision and the evaluation. So you'll be advised on that before the semester starts. So the student is you, and that is a registered student at the School of Social Work. And as well, service users are individuals, families, communities, groups, and that could be anyone who uses the services as an agency that you may be working at during the semester. Just some things for students to keep in mind prior to starting your practicum. If you have not already done so, please read and sign the Student School BSW Field Practicum Agreement and upload it to IPT. It can be found on the School of Social Work Field website. You also have to complete all agency requirements before you can start the practicum. Your field education coordinator can provide you with direction on the requirements for your particular agency. Most agencies require that you complete a certificate of conduct and vulnerable sector check. Other agencies may have additional requirements such as a child protection clearance check, immunization records, or certain training sessions or other screening requirements. It is very important to have these documents submitted by the deadline provided by your agency. If not, it may result in a delay in your practicum and delay in pay if you have a paid placement. Submitting your documents on time also gets your relationship with your agency off to a good start. Please also take the time to read over the BSW Field Practicum Checklist for students, as well as the BSW Field Education Manual and the Field Education Resource Manual. These two documents contain everything you really need to know throughout your practicum and will be a great resource for you if you have any questions before or during your practicum. Prior to your practicum, the field team will be providing updates through your MUN email, so please make sure that you keep an eye on your MUN email. Here are some important things you need to know about your practicum. The practicum is normally 4 days per week. This can be altered if the field instructor, student, and school agree. This usually works out to be Monday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday and may change depending on the agency. You would work at your schedule with your field instructor. Most students work a typical 8:30 to 4:30 or 9 to 5 arrangement, but some students may complete practicum hours in the evenings and weekends, and that is perfectly fine. During the practicum, you will follow the schedule of the agency, which means you will not have a midterm break. To meet accreditation standards, you must complete 350 hours during each of your practicums. You have to complete a total of 350 hours in the practicum, which does not include stat holidays, missed time, sick leave, lunch breaks, or snowstorms. If you're away from your practicum for more than a week, then you should inform your field liaison of your absence. Special absences should also be discussed with the field liaison and the field instructor in advance. So if you know at the beginning of the term you have a wedding out of town and you need to take a few days off, that needs to be discussed with the field instructor and field liaison in advance. The practicum is usually 11 to 13 weeks. Under certain circumstances, practicums can be longer than 13 weeks. However, they cannot be less than 11 weeks. In other words, you cannot say, I'm going to do 30, 40 hours in the practicum so I can finish really early. That's not going to happen since you have to allow time and process for learning and education to occur. If you have more than 350 hours before 11 weeks, then you still have to wait until 11 weeks in order to complete the practicum. It is also important to keep in mind that other activities such as part-time employment and volunteer work can take precedence over your practicum. Field instructors and agencies don't have to agree to change the agency's schedule to accommodate students outside employment. While you are completing your second practicum, you will be doing a social work elective course. Keep in mind that this course does not count as part of the 350 required practicum hours. You should not be working on this course during practicum hours. Since your practicum is usually 4 days a week, you will have one extra day during the week to work on your course. Once you get into your practicum setting, there are some things you need to know. In the agency, there may be some basic requirements that they may want you to cover off. And it's helpful for you to know some important people in the agency because they're going to be able to help you with getting some information you're going to need to know, such as, what are the hours of work at the agency? Where do you park your vehicle? What's the policy around coming into work? Where are you going to be? All those kinds of things. Some of the key people at your agency could be your field instructor, administrative staff, your agency mentor, agency supervisors, volunteers, and other agency personnel. It's helpful at the beginning of your practicum to introduce yourself and gain an understanding of the roles and what they do at the agency. Some agencies will have formal orientation checklists that they will give you, and then it is your responsibility to ensure that all the items are covered off. Some agencies will also have a formal orientation in place that you will attend, or you may have to complete certain modules online. Some orientations may be more informal and involve a conversation with your field instructor or supervisor at the agency. So each agency is going to be a little different. Safety is a key component of any orientation. Most agencies will have some formal processes in place around fire and safety and those kinds of things. If your agency is a smaller agency and they do not have a formal fire or safety process in place, it is important to find out what to do in case of an emergency. So in the first week or so, it's important to find out that information. What to do if there's a fire or other emergency situations such as violence or if there is a medical emergency. It is also important to become familiar with agency policies. Some agencies may have formal agency policy manual, and you will be asked to go through it and take a look at it. It is sometimes helpful to jot down any questions you have, and it is completely understandable that you're not going to be familiar with everything after looking at a policy manual. But you may want to look at some things, and that will remind you for questions that you may have later in the practicum that would have more relevance for you at that time. Agency etiquette is also very important. What is the dress code? What's appropriate to say when you answer the phone? What's the appropriate response to clients on certain questions? Having a little notebook around and jotting down questions as you come up with questions can be really helpful, so you can also jot them down on your phone. Then when you have a chance to meet with your field instructor or mentor, you can have a list of questions to ask them. Visiting relevant agency partners is a helpful part of your orientation process to an agency. You can complete these visits where possible with prior approval from your field instructor. There's no minimum number of agencies to visit. In the past, we've had students say to us, oh, it says somewhere that we have to do 10 agency visits. That's not true, but what is the case is that you need to discuss with your field instructor, what would be actually appropriate for your learning and what would be relevant to the agency. So you could ask yourself questions like, what are agencies that are relevant to the work of the agency, the population of the agency? What agencies does your practicum agency refer to or work closely with? Some agencies may provide an on-site agency visits, while others may provide more of an information session virtually. Some agencies may go ahead and put together an information session for students, but typically students would have to arrange a visit with an agency on their own. Some agencies may provide an on-site agency visit, as mentioned, while others might do a session virtually. One thing we do strongly recommend is visiting an agency as a group. In other words, agencies would prefer to not have one student contacting them one day and another student contacting them the next. If you have a class group chat, communicate amongst yourselves that you're arranging an agency visit. Agencies will greatly appreciate this. Another important thing to keep in mind is that if you commit to an agency visit, please try your best to keep that commitment. We've heard of situations in the past that an agency is expecting 10 students, put effort into arranging staff to meet with the students, and even buying food and providing beverages, and only one student show up. If you are ill or an urgent situation has come up, that is completely understandable, but it would be helpful to let the student know who has arranged the visit. Now we're going to talk about student requirements during the field practicum. Please refer to the BSW Field Manual for further details. All practicum students have to complete learning tasks in number 1, as described in the BSW Field Manual under section 2.6.2b. You will do number 1 plus one other learning task as described in the manual, so either 2 or number 3, depending on the type of practicum you are completing. What are the learning tasks from number 1? The presentation is something we often get questions about from students and field instructors. There is a lot of flexibility with the topic of the presentation, so students and field instructors can be creative, not only to meet the students' learning goals, but to meet a need of the agency as well. It has to be at least 20 minutes in length, and you and the field instructor will agree on what that topic is going to be. Many times the field instructor or agency mentor or another team member may have some items that have been sitting on the side of their desk that they haven't been able to get to. These pieces of work are often great learning for a student. If you are completing a project, researching a topic, or a policy for the agency, that can also be the topic for your presentation, so keep that in mind. For example, if you are doing research on trauma-informed practice, then you can do a presentation to your team about trauma-informed practice. Or if you are doing an environmental scan of what similar agencies are doing nationally, then you can present your findings. Some students have also planned team building activities and ran those activities with the team. Other students may be involved in developing a program or policy analysis and may present on that. The options are pretty endless. You can also partner with another student to complete your presentation. You would just have to make sure that each of you present for about 20 minutes or so. If you have any questions about the presentation, don't hesitate to reach out to your field liaison. We would also like you to attend agency meetings, in-service sessions, anything at all that is related to the agency, wherever possible if it's appropriate. You will also attend 3 peer consultation meetings, which we will discuss in more detail shortly. Learning tasks from number 2 would be completed by field settings engaged with work with individuals, families, or groups. These students will be working with a minimum of 7 service users throughout the term. You potentially could be working with more than that, but it would be a minimum of 7, and the length of time working with service users could be a very short period of time depending on the agency and its mandate, or it could be a longer period of time throughout the term, and that would be fine as well. You would also engage in at least one project. As mentioned, it's important to keep in mind that project can inform your presentation. The project and presentation do not have to be connected, but many students do connect their project and presentation. As with the presentation, there's a lot of flexibility with this project, so you and your field instructor can be creative. Students can do a community development project, policy analysis, research, program development, proposal writing, and committee work. The project typically not only meets some of the students' learning goals, but can also build upon capacity within an agency. Many field instructors and agency mentors have items that they would like to get to, and this is a great opportunity to not only meet your learning needs, but also the needs of the agency and team. Is there a topic or resource the team would like to know more about? Are there policies or programs that need to be updated? Is your agency trying to do an environmental scan of what other agencies are doing? Is your agency trying to develop resources for clients, such as posters, pamphlets, or social media or website content? Is there a proposal that they've been trying to get to writing, or projects on a committee that they haven't been able to get to? All of these examples are excellent learning opportunities. As with the presentation, the project options are also quite endless. For number 2, there is an intervention list of things you could be doing with direct service users, just to give you an idea, and that is located in the MUN BSW Field Manual if you want to go back and do more reading. So you could be doing screening, assessment or risk assessment, referrals, service recipient advocacy, resource coordination, support counseling, adjustment counseling, change focused counseling and therapy, psychoeducational interventions, art and play therapy, grief and loss counseling, addiction counseling, social life or life skill development, conflict resolution intervention. Could be couples counseling, family counseling, group work, case management, and or discharge planning. So that just gives you an indication of some of the interventions you may be doing with direct service users. There is no limit as to the amount of time or interventions that you have to spend with a client. We recognize that every agency is very different. Now let's talk a little bit about the learning tasks for number 3. These are field settings engaged in work related to organizations, communities, and or policies. So different from number 2. Students engaged with organizations, communities, and policies have opportunities to use assessment, intervention, and termination skills in at least 3 of the following categories. It could be program or event planning, marketing and implementation, program or event evaluation, small group work, team or committee or board work, task force or advocacy group involvement, coalition formulation and maintenance, meso or macro level advocacy, community analysis, community organizing, needs assessment, leadership development, staff development, policy analysis, development and management, issue analysis, organizational assessment and development, networking, social policy research, financial resource development, plan change techniques, resource development, public education, or presentations. All of these things are listed in the MUN BSW Field Manual if you want more information. So when you sit down with your field instructor to look at your learning contract and what you're going to be doing, you're going to be identifying that you're going to be doing work in at least 3 of these areas. We are now going to talk about expectations of all students completing their practicum. We expect that you're going to be participating actively in your own learning in the practicum. Ask questions, be curious, put yourself outside of your comfort zone. Take on as many learning opportunities as possible to meet your individual learning goals. Ask for feedback and be open to feedback. Complete the agency's orientation assignments, observe agency policies. You'll also be preserving confidentiality, which is so important as you have a huge responsibility when working with clients and with vulnerable people and having access to their lives. You're going to provide written reports and records as documented within the agency, and obviously you are going to meet the CSW Code of Ethics. As previously mentioned, as part of your orientation process, you can also participate in relevant agency visits. During your practicum, you'll be completing a student self-assessment, learning contract, and have a number of recording requirements. We will discuss these expectations in more depth shortly. Throughout your practicum, you will also be expected to participate in the evaluation of self and the learning process, and participate in the evaluation of the field practicum. During the field practicum, students' learning is based on 5 outcomes or expectation areas. They are field setting and community context, teaching and learning context, theory and practice, self-awareness, and professional context. When you look at the learning contract, which we'll be talking about shortly, it is based on these 5 areas or outcomes that students are expected to develop some knowledge and skill in. Further detailed information can also be found in section 1.6 of the Field Education Manual. We do have expectations of field instructors, and we're going to let you know what those are. The field instructor assumes a major teaching role with students in the integration of theory and practice in the field. They facilitate student learning through introduction of new theories, knowledge, and research developments relevant to social work practice in the field setting. The field instructor may assign work to you, particularly if you have an on-site field instructor. This could involve the selection of cases, groups, and other activities to provide appropriate learning experiences for students. They have to also make time to be a field instructor. Part of this involves working with you to develop a learning contract, as well as meeting at least once a week for field instruction. They must review the weekly critical reflections and other required recordings and discuss student learning. We hope for at least a minimum of an hour and a half. This normally isn't an issue, but if you are not getting regular field instruction, you should let us know as your field liaison, because one of the things we want to make sure is that theory and skills are integrated with practice during this experience. Field instructors also provide consultation and supervision of tasks as needed, review student documentation reports, and evaluate student performance. They are also required to be in consultation with the field liaison throughout the semester, provide regular updates on how students are doing in their practicum. They also must alert the student and the field liaison as to any concerns and issues. We would expect that to be a process where field instructors are working with you in terms of the practicum and identifying if there are any concerns. In an agency where we would not have an on-site field instructor, we usually have an agency mentor. They would provide day-to-day supervision and guidance for a student. We would also expect them to be involved and work in a collaborative way with the field instructor to ensure a rich experience for students. They may also assign work to students as well in consultation with the field instructor, which may include selection of service recipients to work with, projects, and other experiences. They may provide consultation and supervision of tasks as needed, and they may review student documentation and reports. They also may monitor student progress and collaborate and consult regarding the student's performance. We would also expect agency mentors to assist with the orientation process for students and ensure students have access to the resources needed within the agency. We previously discussed the various roles of those involved in field education. Scherer and Peleg-Oren use the term learning triangle to bring clarity to those involved in the field education process. The learning triangle was elaborated on by Larkin to create a visual similar to that on the slide. On this slide is a Venn diagram with 3 overlapping circles. One circle is the university, with roles such as field education coordinator and field liaison. Another circle is the student, and the other circle is the agency, with roles of field instructor and agency mentor if applicable. The concept identified that all those involved in field education, the university, the student, and the agency play a part in developing the professional social worker. This is one of the unique aspects of field education. All these vital players have unique roles, responsibilities, and expectations, yet come together to function as a whole to form the basis and vision of field education. So, social work's signature pedagogy. You're probably wondering, where do I find things? On the Schools Field website below, there are a number of helpful resources available, such as the BSW Field Education Manual, checklist for field instructors and agency mentors, checklist for students, and the guide to completing the learning contract. There is also a field education resource manual that Lisa will email to you, which is a great help in weekly field instruction and contains information about theories, values, skills, as well as templates for recordings. A number of the forms can also be found on the school's website, such as the student self-assessment, weekly critical reflection, and the midterm reflection. The rest of the forms are completed in IPT. As you know, IPT is a database that allows students, field instructors, agency mentors, and field education coordinators to efficiently and effectively complete administrative tasks related to field education. This includes keeping relevant practicum and contact information up to date and accessing and completing forms online. We have a helpful IPT manual and IPT tutorial videos available that should hopefully give you a good refresher on how to use IPT and complete the field practicum forms. They are available on the school's website. Before we get into the forms, it is important to bring up the importance of keeping your contact information up to date, particularly your emergency contact in case a medical emergency happens during your practicum and your field instructor or field liaison needs to contact them. It is also helpful to upload a picture of yourself into IPT. Now we'll move into the forms that are completed in IPT. First, we'll list the forms that are completed in IPT by the student, which include the BSW student application for field practicum and the BSW student brief resume. So you would have put those in prior to your placement. The forms completed in IPT by the student and the field instructor include the timesheet and supervision record, the learning contract, midterm evaluation, final evaluation, and both the student and the field instructor complete an evaluation of the practicum. So let's talk a bit about the student self-assessment. As mentioned, the student self-assessment template can be found on the school's field education website. The student submits a completed form to their field instructor prior to the first field instruction meeting, so typically 24 hours in advance. This self-assessment is really crucial since it's really the foundation of the learning contract. The self-assessment really gives you a chance to reflect on what you are going to learn in the practicum, what you bring to the practicum, things you may find challenging, and your coping strategies, and how your field instructor can best support your learning. Discussing this information with your field instructor helps set a foundation of having a positive learning experience during your practicum. It's also really helpful to start this conversation of how your field instructor can best support your learning. Really think about what learning opportunities have been helpful for you in the past. What supports do you need? Are you typically someone who likes to jump right into things, or would you prefer to do some reading and planning or observing and then try it out yourself? Everyone learns differently in different situations, and this can change over time. The student self-assessment will give you a place to start the conversation with your field instructor, but it is really important to keep that open communication throughout your practicum. Field instruction is an excellent opportunity for this. Let your field instructor know what has been helpful for your learning, or what may be more helpful moving forward. This is really a part of adult learning theory and taking on more of that self-directed approach to your own learning experience. Something to keep in mind is that the student self-assessment only needs to be submitted to your field instructor and agency mentor, if applicable. It is important to retain a copy, however, in case it is requested by the field team. So let's now talk about the learning contract. The learning contract is a user-friendly document. It is basically a plan that outlines field learning and is agreed upon by the field instructor and the student. It outlines the responsibilities for the student and the field instructor. It assists in the formulation of individualized evaluation plans, and it ensures appropriate opportunities to learn and ensures there are appropriate opportunities to demonstrate competence in each of the evaluation criteria. The learning contract is available through IPT. We have put in examples of activities to demonstrate each one of the outcomes and objectives. You can leave it as is if it meets everything you need, or you and your field instructor can add in additional activities in the additional learning activities section. It is helpful to push yourself to come up with additional learning activities. These could be specific to the client population you are working with, your agency, or your own personal learning goals. As you will see in IPT, the learning contract also contains the midterm and final evaluations. So at the end of the field practicum, you can look back at the learning contract and it will give you a great overview of what you learned and how you did throughout the term. As previously mentioned, there is a guide to completing your learning contract on the field education website. So now let's talk a bit about recording expectations during the term. Clarification of these recordings can be found under section 2.10 of the BSW Field Manual. We will also provide further information regarding these recording expectations on other slides. We will discuss the timesheet and supervision record, the daily log, the weekly critical reflections, other field setting notes or reports as required, as well as a minimum of 6 examples of service recipient work that will be evaluated by your field instructor. The first type of recording you must do on your practicum is your timesheet and supervision record, which is found in IPT. Additional information regarding IPT can be found in the BSW IPT manual found on the Field Education website. Here is an example of what the timesheet and supervision record looks like in IPT. Please follow the directions carefully. You will be recording your time in your practicum as well as your supervision time with your field instructor each week. As noted in IPT, in the hours of practice rows, please record the total number of hours you were at your practicum each week. In the hours of supervision rows, please record the number of hours you received field instruction each week. Students should have a minimum of 1.5 hours of dedicated field instruction time per week. You do not need to record informal daily supervision, only your weekly field instruction block. Your hours of supervision should already be counted in your hours of practice, so you don't count twice. Students keep track of their hours. At the midterm and final, the timesheet and supervision record are electronically signed in IPT by the student, field instructor, or field instructors, and the agency mentor if applicable. Students are expected to keep a daily log during their practicum. Daily logs are designed to assist students in tracking their activities on a daily basis. They are also quite helpful during field instruction. There is no set format for a daily log. However, students often use an electronic calendar or diary such as Outlook Calendar or may use a written daily planner. Students can discuss their preferred format for the daily log with their field instructor and agency mentor, if applicable. The daily logs are only viewed by the field instructor and agency mentor, except in exceptional circumstances where the field liaison would have access. Now let's talk a bit about weekly critical reflections, which is really the basis of field instruction. Each week you will complete a weekly critical reflection. Reflective practice is an essential aspect of good social work practice. The weekly critical reflection is intended to provide you with opportunities to engage in and develop good habits in reflective practice, opportunities to define your professional development and learning needs in an open, candid, and self-analytical manner. Also, through reviewing your weekly critical reflections, they provide field instructors and agency mentors with guidance in reference to your learning needs and professional development. That is why it is important to give your field instructor plenty of time to review the material. If you give it to them right before the session, it's not going to be particularly helpful for you during field instruction because they needed time to reflect on your comments as well. You can work out an arrangement with your field instructor, but we would usually recommend providing your field instructor with your weekly critical reflection 24 hours in advance of field instruction. The weekly critical reflections only need to be submitted to your field instructor and agency mentor if applicable. It is important to keep copies of them, however, in case the field team requests a copy of them. A template of a weekly critical reflection tool is available on the Field Education website. You'll also find the Field Education Resource Manual that Lisa Muse will email to you. It's going to be a big help when it comes to completing your weekly critical reflections. You can also bring it to your field instruction sessions. It contains a lot of helpful material for you and your field instructor. There is flexibility with the weekly critical reflections. There are various critical reflection tools out there, and you can alter the weekly critical reflections to best meet your learning needs. You may focus on some areas of critical reflections more one week than another, or may wish to alter the questions to strengthen your critical reflection skills. Your field instructor may have additional reflection questions you can consider, or you may want to try out a particular model of reflection yourself. In regards to the content of the weekly critical reflection, some important things to consider in your weekly critical reflection include the summary of student learning. So, what did you learn the past week about your agency, service recipients? What did you learn about your role and the roles of others in the field setting or community? You'll also want to incorporate a description and examples of theory, values, knowledge, interventions, and skills used. When did you integrate the code of ethics into your practice? When did you use social work skills or interprofessional skills? When did you demonstrate knowledge and skill in collegial or collaborative practice? What social work interventions did you use? What interprofessional interventions did you use? What theories did you use in your practice? What theories may you use moving forward? Did anything conflict with your personal values? What did you learn about the agency's values? You'll also want to consider the strengths demonstrated by and challenges encountered in relation to any aspects of activities or tasks. Are there things that you believe you did well this week? Are there things you are happy about, proud of? Are there challenges that you faced? Are there things you may want to do differently in the future? Are there things you want to learn more about? What were the feelings, impressions, and personal reactions to any aspect of activities or tasks? Was there anything that made you uncomfortable? Was there anything that challenged you? How did a certain situation make you feel? Why did you feel that way? How do you think it made the other person feel? Are there certain situations or people you think about? Anything that keeps you up at night or can't turn off at the end of the day? What moments were happy for you? Anything confusing? You'll also want to reflect on political and structural factors and power dynamics, such as what political, structural, or systemic factors or barriers influence service recipients, the field setting, your practice. Were there any themes of concerns or issues that individuals faced? What power dynamics did you notice? You'll also want to make note of any developments and insights in self awareness. What did you learn about yourself the past week? Where does my knowledge come from? What did you learn from a certain situation? What do I know now that I didn't know before? What impact did I have on a certain situation, and what impact did it have on me? What did you realize you didn't know, or what you need to learn more about? In addition, it is important to have questions for your field instructor and agency mentor, if applicable, and points for discussion for the upcoming field instruction session. Any of the points above are excellent pieces to discuss with your field instructor. You may also wish to bring up various other discussion points, such as any immediate or crisis situations you would like to address, what additional learning opportunities you would like to try, did you encounter any ethical dilemmas this past week, what aspect of the learning contract did you want to discuss. So it's pretty much endless. Many students find the weekly critical reflection template to meet their needs, but as you can see, the types of critical reflection questions are endless. The main thing is that you are challenging yourself in the vital skill of critical reflection and providing a weekly written piece of work for your field instructor. At most agency settings, you will be required by field settings to complete agency documentation, such as field setting notes or reports. These pieces of documentation will be placed on service recipient or other agency files and would follow the agency's stipulated format. Some important pieces to keep in mind: agency documentation is the property of the field setting. Agency documentation focuses on the delivery of service and tends to be written in a summary style, whereas other types of recordings focus more on highlighting and enhancing student development. Agency documentation must be read and signed by field instructors, agency mentors for legal purposes. Also, review by field instructors and agency mentors assist students in developing a professional social work writing style appropriate for agency and organization records and other written communication such as reports, letters, memos, or minutes. Whether or not required by the field setting, students may include a limited number of field setting pieces of documentation in their required 6 examples of service recipient work. In other words, pieces of agency documentation can count as up to 4 of your 6 examples of service recipient work. If you use the agency documentation as one or more of your examples of service recipient work, it is still important to engage in critical reflection as part of that process, such as during field instruction with your field instructor. All students in all field settings are required to complete at least 6 examples of service recipient work. These recordings are to be submitted to your field instructor and agency mentor if applicable. It is important to keep copies of these recordings in case the field team requests a copy of them. We ask that you include at least 3 different types. In other words, you can't complete all the same type. Examples of service recipient work include agency documentation, audio recordings, community assessments, critical analysis of meetings, event planning and coordination, group work recordings, observation analysis of intervention, process recordings, program or project recordings, reflections on direct observations, summary recordings, or video recordings. Detailed information about these examples of service recipient work can be found in 2.10.3 of the BSW Field Manual. Templates can also be found in the Field Education Resource Manual. As with the weekly critical reflection, these are only templates and can be adjusted to best meet your learning needs. The main thing is that you are practicing the essential social work skill of critical reflection. You may find other templates that work better to meet your needs or the situation you are critically reflecting on, or you and your field instructor may develop a template that works for both of you. Also remember, please don't leave these recordings until the end of the practicum. It's best to try to aim to get half of them done before the midterm and the other half following the midterm. You'll be very stressed if you have to submit 6 at the end. Also, the other piece is that they are part of your learning process. You would like to get feedback, the opportunity to work on them, and improve your skills and knowledge. Throughout the practicum, you will need to attend 3 peer consultation meetings, in person or through technologies such as Skype, WebEx, Zoom, or by phone. You will be assigned to peer consultation groups by the field education coordinators There may be students from a similar setting as your own, or there may be other students from different field settings. Groups vary in size, but are usually 6 to 8 students, and you will usually meet for 1.5 hours, and we suggest to meet early in the practicum, midway, and then towards the end. Peer consultation is a process whereby a group of professionals without a leader meet to review service recipient or community issues and intervention approaches. The peer consultation sessions provide you with the opportunity to consult with each other about field practicum practice. You can also share your research, committee, policy, or project work with each other and seek suggestions and support from other group members. We really encourage you to get the most out of your peer consultation sessions. Peer support is so vital to social work practice and gives you the opportunity to consult, share ideas, and support each other. Also, take this opportunity to learn about other agencies and the clients they work with or the work they do. Many students meet virtually, but it's also possible to meet in person. We've had some students make an afternoon of their peer consultation meetings and incorporate an agency visit as part of the meeting. For example, you may be doing a placement at a community agency that has a meeting space. You could potentially host an agency visit and then have your peer consultation meeting. Other students meet up for coffee or lunch. All students are reminded that strict adherence to the principle of confidentiality must be enforced through the peer consultation sessions. As a group, you will decide how to share the leadership, organizational, and recording responsibilities. Rotation of these roles is strongly recommended. Also, minutes from the meetings will be circulated by students amongst the group and also submitted to your field instructors or agency mentor and the field liaison. There is a peer consultation group minutes outline that you can use to take minutes during your meetings. And you're also provided with another document called the Guidelines for Peer Consultation, Social Work 4302. This will give you some additional information to guide your meetings. It can be found on the field education website. Peer consultation sessions count towards your 350 hours of practicum time. The sessions can take place during regular practicum hours or outside regular practicum hours in order to accommodate all members of your group. The remaining slides will discuss the evaluations that are completed during your practicum. Additional information about the evaluations can be found in section 2.11.4 in the BSW Field Education Manual. These evaluations include the midterm evaluation of the student, the final evaluation of the student, and the student evaluation of the field practicum. So let's just talk a little bit more about the evaluations of the student. It's important to remember that your evaluation starts with a learning contract. So it actually does start with your first week at the agency. Although the midterm and the final are the formal evaluation periods, evaluation is meant to be an ongoing process. Completing your weekly critical reflections are an excellent time to reflect on your own progress. Weekly field instruction sessions are also a great time to check in with your field instructor and get their feedback on your strengths, areas you can grow, and where you are in this practicum process. Ideally, any feedback in the midterm and final evaluation shouldn't be a surprise if you and your field instructor are engaged in open communication throughout your practicum. It really comes back to approaching the practicum as an adult learner, engaging in your own critical reflection, strengthening your self-awareness, and asking and being open to feedback, not just from your field instructor, but also from other team members as well. We will get into the midterm and final evaluation process in the following slides. However, it is important to know that your field instructor is responsible for writing the evaluation. Evaluation for both the midterm and final evaluation are based on a number of factors. It's based on the student self-assessment form that you do in the beginning, your learning contract, your daily logs, weekly critical reflections, and other required recordings, and agency documentation that you do. It could be your midterm reflection. We also look at the School of Social Work Suitability Policy. If you're not familiar with that policy, you can go check it out at the Field Education webpage. You also involves student performance, how are you doing? Agency feedback, which could include other team members, volunteers, and possibly even clients, and as well the SCWK Code of Ethics, which I'm sure you are all quite familiar with by now. Let's talk a bit about the rating scale that we use on the midterm and final evaluation. As you know with the learning contract, the midterm and final is all built in. It is a living document that we use and it is the one document that has everything in it, the learning contract, the midterm, and the final. The grading choices for the midterm and final evaluations include meets expectation, so that's ME, needs improvement, NI, is not meeting expectations, and M. In terms of meeting expectations, we know that students are consistently demonstrating an acceptable level of theory and skills, creativity, critical thinking, analytical skills, communication skills, professional and ethical behavior. In terms of needs improvement, the student is demonstrating a minimal level of theory and skills, creativity, critical thinking, analytical skills, communication skills, professional and ethical behavior. So they are demonstrating that there are some of those things there, but they need strengthening and building upon it. Basically, with not meeting expectations, the student is failing to demonstrate a minimal level of theory and skills, creativity, critical thinking, analytical skills, communication skills, professional and ethical behavior. As well, we ask field instructors to provide qualitative feedback on their performance in the comment and summary sections of the midterm and final evaluation. This could include your strengths, weaknesses, and areas for future learning. All these things will be really helpful to you for your own development in your knowledge and skills in the field of social work. First, we'll be talking about the midterm evaluation. The midterm typically occurs at about week 6 of the practicum, so about the halfway point. The midterm evaluation is completed by the field instructor, typically in consultation with other team members, whether that be an agency mentor, volunteers, or clients if appropriate. The midterm evaluation will summarize the student's activities in the practicum, the student's strengths and areas for improvement, general level of student competence in regards to social work values, knowledge, and skills at that point of evaluation, plans for student activities and emphasis from the midterm to the end of the practicum, as well as students' needs for learning and development and requisite learning opportunities. Prior to the midterm evaluation, students are required to complete the midterm reflection, which can be found on the field education website. Students are required to submit this to their field instructor, typically 1 week prior to the midterm evaluation meeting. The field instructor and agency mentor, if applicable, completes a draft of the midterm evaluation using the learning contract. A formal evaluation takes place usually during a regularly scheduled field instruction session. This would include the field instructor and student and the agency mentor if applicable. We usually recommend field instructors to provide students with a draft of the evaluation 24 hours in advance of this meeting to give students the opportunity to reflect on the evaluation. Following the meeting, the field instructor would finalize the evaluation in IPT, and the student, field instructor, and agency mentor then electronically sign the evaluation in IPT. If for some reason there are any concerns, the field instructor would clearly document them and discuss them with the student. More than likely, the field liaison would then meet with the student and the field instructor. We'd talk about any particular challenges and develop a plan together to try and overcome those challenges during the remainder of the practicum. So the final evaluation obviously occurs at the end of the practicum, typically during the last week. The process for final evaluation is similar to the midterm evaluation. The field instructor would write up a draft of the final evaluation and provide the student with some time to review it, often 24 hours in advance. The field instructor and the student would then meet to discuss the final evaluation, typically during the final field instruction session. Usually when writing the evaluation, the field instructor seeks additional input from the agency mentor if applicable, other team members, volunteers, and possibly even clients. If the student has an agency mentor, the agency mentor would typically be present during the evaluation meeting as well. Although students are not expected to complete a reflection similar to the midterm reflection, students should come to this meeting prepared to discuss their progress in the 5 outcome areas. Some questions the final evaluation usually addresses includes: were all the goals met? Has the student completed the minimum expected outcomes? What are the final thoughts about the student and the practicum experience? What are the student's strengths? What are areas for student professional development? The evaluation may also address the student's suitability for the profession. Following the final evaluation meeting, the final evaluation must be signed and dated electronically in IPT by the student, field instructor, and agency mentor if applicable. It is also important to keep in mind that many field instructors often use the final evaluation as a foundation for future professional references. So there is an evaluation of the agency and the field instructor as well. Verbal feedback is provided by the student during the practicum, but the student has an opportunity to complete an evaluation form after the final evaluation of the student is submitted. It is only shared with the field instructor if the student agrees, unless the CASW Code of Ethics is breached. If the code is breached, the concerns must be addressed to the field liaison and through the agency. Throughout your practicum, we ask that students be aware of the COVID-19 protocols at your agency, as well as abide by current public health guidelines. Students have also been asked to be aware of agency policies and procedures, to become familiar with them and understand what they mean. CASW stresses the importance of confidentiality when working with clients, and as a student, we ask that you are respectful of confidential client information and handle it appropriately. We also ask the students be familiar with the social media policy and guidelines for social work students. Social media was never an issue years ago, but now it is. So we ask that you become familiar with the social media policy and take a look at your own social media and whatever you have out there in the World Wide Web and see whether or not it is appropriate. Private cell phone usage at the agency should not be occurring. Keep in mind that if you wish to look at apps, check social media, or check personal email, etc., that should be done during your break time, which would include breaks or at lunchtime. Keep in mind boundaries. Think about what the Code of Ethics says about boundaries and make sure that if you have any questions at all that you discuss with your field instructor, staff at the agency, or your field liaison. It is important that you are appropriately dressed when you are at the agency. Take your lead from your field instructor and from the other agency staff. And there may be times where it is completely appropriate for you to be wearing jeans, but just take the lead from them. Also keep in mind, from a safety point of view, the agency may have some requirements around the type of dress that you use, such as footwear. If you are not going to be at the agency, please make sure that you let your field instructor know and any appropriate staff that they have designated. It's important for them to know that you are not going to be there. A lot of things happen in communities these days, and sometimes the media would like to get some information or a comment. You are at your agency as a student, so if you're approached by the media for a comment over an issue that is happening in the community, please keep in mind that you are there in that student role, and as the other agency staff, be that your field instructor or appropriate agency personnel who will be addressing these issues. You should be mindful of the fact that you are there as a student, and your role is to be there to learn, develop, and grow your social work skills and knowledge, not to respond to questions from the media. We have reached the end of the orientation. Thank you for taking the time to listen in. We hope that it was helpful. I'm sure there's something we have missed or topics you have additional questions about. And if you have any further questions, certainly do not hesitate to reach out to a member of the field education team. Lisa Muse is our person, our administrative assistant who knows all, so please don't hesitate to contact her. She'll be able to find out the answer for you or direct you to one of the field education coordinators, and we'll be able to help you. Thank you again.